Hello, YouTube. Sidekick here with another business perspective piece on Eagle Dynamics and Digital Combat Simulator. Now, I'm quite serious. I never wanted or expected this to become a recurring theme on my YouTube channel, but I have done a couple of videos on it, and they have received, well, way more than their share of feedback, let's just say. Now, one part of the discussion in the last video surrounded my assertion that Eagle Dynamics is doing community management and not community engagement, and that there's a difference. And the discussion moved over to my Discord channel, and it caused me to write, well, let's call it a lengthy response, which is kinder than saying a dissertation to the question. And that was because it's one of those little niche topics that, for real-life reasons, happen to know something about, or at least I think I do. Somewhat to my surprise, I actually got feedback from Discord members that they thought the topic was worth sharing with a wider audience by making a video. And by the way, I warn you in advance that this topic is even more business geeky than the last two were, so I will not be disappointed if you look away now. What I'm about to say is unlikely to contribute to improving DCS. I go on record as saying that. But it might help people understand why things tend to play out the way they do. So in a sense, I'm hoping to help you manage your own expectations about what you're going to get from DCS, because in essence, thinking that I understand what's going on behind the scenes helps me manage my expectations about Eagle Dynamics and DCS, and frankly, that just helps me enjoy the game more. So, as always, before I start, a quick bit of context and caveats. First of all, I have very little first-hand knowledge of how Eagle Dynamics handles community management. Other than knowing that they do have individuals who wear that title, and I have interacted with those folks a few times. But I do not know who those community managers report to, and how much direction they receive from senior management, or how much information they provide on a regular basis. So anything I say or appear to imply about those kinds of details really is speculation on my part, although it may be informed speculation. Now, I do know a little bit about the general topic of stakeholder or community management and or engagement. This, again, comes back to real-life experience. For a few years, I helped run a national trade association in Canada, the one that represented aerospace and space companies. As part of that job, I spent a lot of time both engaging with our community, but more importantly, representing that community's views to politicians and government officials. To put it bluntly, I was, by most people's definition, a lobbyist, although I prefer advocate, if you don't mind. Then, later, I was asked to teach some courses at the local business school, the Telfer School of Management. These courses were aimed mostly, actually, at public servants who were running procurement programs, and mostly what I taught, and still teach actually, is about how to get the most out of their interaction with their suppliers. All of which gave me a lot of exposure to how, at least the Canadian federal government, runs their stakeholder engagement processes. Except that mostly they don't run those, they run stakeholder management programs, and it actually consists of a fairly standard playbook. And having learned that, I can see by watching other organizations, large companies, other governments, other government agencies, that this really is a pretty standard playbook for how to deal with a stakeholder community that has the ability to influence the success or failure of any of your initiatives. Okay, hang on, it's about to get nerdy in here. I'm going to leave the video playing, but we're going to have to make a graph. Well, more of a chart, really. You see, every stakeholder management plan starts with this chart. It's a stakeholder map, it's often called. The objective of this chart is to place all of the stakeholders on the map according to where they fall on two axes. The horizontal is the sentiment axis, and the vertical is the influence axis. So, stakeholders who are very supportive are on the right, detractors are on the left. Stakeholders that can make a real difference in terms of your outcomes are high on the chart, and those whose opinions don't really matter are low on the chart. Now, you would think, naively, that the goal of any stakeholder management process would be to move everyone as far to the right as possible. And I think everybody thinks that Eagle Dynamics should want to make them happy. Not so. In fact, what the playbook says you should do is draw a diagonal line from the lower left to the upper right of the chart, like this. Now, what you want to do is move everyone towards that line. In other words, you don't want or expect everyone to be a supporter. Trying to do that just takes too much effort. But you do want to make sure that your supporters are the ones who matter. Okay, so this is where the playbook comes into action, and you can see it in action if you watch the way Eagle Dynamics interacts with people. I know it's the way they've interacted with me. If you have supporters that are already high on the right, you make darn sure you keep them happy. Give them even more influence by giving them inside information and allowing them to talk to the community. Does this sound like any YouTube channels you know? Those supporters that are mildly positive, well, you try to placate them. Keep them from moving to the left, to the detractor side. If you can, you also move them to the right and up by encouraging them through measures that also increase their influence. Now, for the detractors. Mild detractors, you basically have a choice. Usually, you'll want to at least try and see if you can move them to the right, to the supporter side. But if they resist that, start to move back to the left, then you have to work on moving them down. And of course, the real resistors, the ones that are on the far left of the map, well, you have to work hard at moving and keeping them down in the bottom left-hand corner. You don't even really have to try to win them over. You just have to try to keep them from making much of a difference. So you can do this in a number of ways. But at the end of the day, it all consists of that you want to isolate them, marginalize them, or outright discredit them. So, if you're a mild detractor, or someone whose influence is already judged to be fairly modest, you will likely end up in a conversation that goes a little like this. You'll raise what you consider to be a valid point. The stakeholder management team, or stakeholder manager, will respond with a fairly standard justification that they use all the time. If you're actually not satisfied with that answer, then they will start asking you very specific questions. They'll ask about your specific concerns, examples, maybe even suggestions about how to fix the problem. You will think that that means that they're going to try to help you. No. What they will do is they will take those away and they will come back with a more detailed answer. The answer will usually consist of the following parts. First of all, they'll reframe your question. This is actually the last step they do. The point of reframing your concerns or questions is so that they are more amenable to the response they've already decided to provide. Next, they will provide some details of their research into the problem. This will consist of data or facts that you probably don't have access to and therefore can't really question. Things like conversations inside the company, research that they did, that sort of thing. So the net result of their analysis is going to be that one of two conclusions. Either that your facts are wrong and that in fact they actually solved the real problem and you don't understand the solution because you're not in possession of the full story, or they tried and analyzed your suggestion, although you didn't know that because it was an internal analysis, and they've tried it before and they decided for very good reasons that it would not work. So this is what I call the "we don't have a solution so you don't have a problem" response. It's not really designed to satisfy you. It might satisfy you, but usually it's designed to convince you and anyone else who's listening that you don't really know what you're talking about in enough detail to be making the detailed suggestions that they drew you into making. If you persist in voicing the same opinions, they'll respond in more and more terse terms, letting you know, and everyone else know, that those concerns have already been addressed, that there isn't a solution, so there isn't a problem, and it's time to move on. Honestly, I have not spent a lot of time looking at the online discussions of Eagle Dynamics contributions to them, but I will be very surprised if they don't follow something very close to this pattern. It's what was always done when I was the one who was advocating for things. And to be clear, it's not wrong. It's an effective way of managing stakeholders, which is why it's the playbook. And that's why I get you saw. Take a look at the way any large organization does outreach or crisis management, and you're going to see this pattern. But the problem is, it's not stakeholder engagement. And this is a point that I have to emphasize when I teach this stuff. Stakeholder engagement is something you do when you genuinely care about what your stakeholders think. When you honestly believe that you can make your product better by listening to your customers, you engage with them. When you've already developed your plan and strategy and you just want people to get on board or shut up, then you manage your customers. And there's a fundamental way to tell the difference. A stakeholder manager's first response will be to present the company's position. If they ask you anything, it will be to present more details, effectively to stick your neck farther into the noose. If someone is doing stakeholder engagement, on the other hand, their first response will be curious about why you say what you do. They'll ask you details about how you engage with their product. They'll try to understand your motivation and your background knowledge and your experience. In short, they'll try to figure out how you might be able to help them before deciding to shut you out or shut you down. Now, what little contact I've had with Eagle Dynamics, no one has ever once invoked this kind of curiosity. I would say that so far I've pretty much seen the standard playbook applied respectfully and in a professional way, but it's the standard stakeholder management playbook. From which I determined that, at some level, Eagle Dynamics isn't interested in my opinions. They're interested in my support. And given that DCS is really the only game in town that gives me most of what I'm looking for, that game is going to continue to have my support because I don't have a choice. That does not mean that I agree with the way Eagle Dynamics runs its business, and I certainly don't trust a lot of what they say, since, you know, in all honesty, it's designed mostly to satisfy the fanboys and marginalize the trolls. But I understand that. I don't begrudge them that approach. However, I might believe that there is a better way of doing it, but that's the way they've chosen, and I get it, and that's what I expect. And that's why I'm not going to continue to get upset when Eagle Dynamics behaves this way. I believe they're doing it for a reason. I don't have to agree with the reason to understand why they do it. So, I'm going to continue to play DCS. I'm going to continue to complain about certain things, at least inside my community, because I just really do wish some things were different about DCS, but I don't really expect things to change. And so long as I don't expect them to change, I won't be disappointed when they don't. So, that's how I'm going to approach DCS. I'm sure everyone out there would love to have some comments about what they're going to, how they're going to approach DCS and what they're going to do. Feel free to leave them in the comments. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you again soon.